Hi, Molly McIsaac here, and today I'm going to be vlogging about something really important, and that is about harassment at conventions. Now, as a geek, if you've gone to a convention, you know that they are an incredible place to share your passion and meet like-minded people, to cosplay, to buy awesome collectibles, to meet your heroes. They're basically Disneyland for geeks, and it's amazing. And I have been to hundreds of conventions in my life because of the nature of my job, and I've never gotten sick of them because they are just a reprieve from real life. You look around you and you know that there's people around you that love the same things that you do. So they are a great sanctuary for passions and shared passions, and they should be a safe place. But the problem is that they oftentimes are not a safe place. Recently there's been a huge controversy. There's a local convention here in Washington that I've actually been a guest at several times and have enjoyed quite a bit in the past, called Aki-con. As with a lot of these smaller anime conventions, Aki-con is rife with issues, but this year they crossed the line. This year they hired a guest, a DJ, who had a prior record of raping a underage girl, and they still hired him despite many warnings from people who were posting on their Facebook. And not only did they not respond to the warnings, but they deleted them. So that was just a completely incorrect behavior on their part. And of course, a girl allegedly got raped during Aki-con this year. I was close to this situation. I actually counseled her after it happened, so I don't feel too comfortable commenting on much of it, but it is a clusterfuck, for lack of a better word. And I really believe that, you know, the convention is handling things really poorly. They are deleting the threads on their Facebook about this. They have basically been victim blaming the victim. It's terrible. I'll post some links below if you guys would like to read about it. It's awful. But I think that while this may not have been prevented by a harassment policy is an important thing to have at every convention, because upon talking to the victim at Aki-con, the one thing that she was unclear on was whether or not it was the convention's responsibility that this had happened to her. And because it happened on the premises of the convention, it is their responsibility. But they had a lack of a harassment policy. Now, the reason that not having a harassment policy is very bad is because there's no clear rules. People can say, well, nobody told me not to act this way, nobody told me not to take pictures of girls' butts or sexually harass people in cosplay, so how do I know that I'm doing it wrong? And it's kind of like a plea of ignorance. And that's totally incorrect and wrong, and is something that should be rectified. I recently wrote my very first harassment policy for Kamikaze Expo, which, if you guys watched Fangasm, know that that's the convention that I worked for on reality television. And Regina Carpinelli and I gave her a harassment policy to put on the website and print up, and so I was very thorough, and it's important to be thorough. So I really believe that every convention needs a harassment policy. People need to be told, no, you can't do these things because that is preventative measure. And the harassment policies, they need to be very, very thorough. They need to say, you know, no discretion on race, gender, you know, gender identity, disabilities. It has to be all inclusive, because otherwise, like I said, somebody's going to say, well, that wasn't in the harassment policy, so how was I supposed to know that I didn't do it? Staff need to be trained to look out for harassment and how to deal with it. There needs to be things listed not only in the brochures, but on websites about who to call and when to call and why to call and what action to take. It's very important, because as geek culture grows, so do our conventions. That's amazing. What is not amazing is that as it becomes more mainstream and more people flock into these spaces, they become self-contained. And as in any society or any subculture, there are the bad eggs, and there are people who are going to take it as far as they can. Another really important thing that conventions need to be doing with these harassment policies is they not only need to be putting them on their website and the brochure and mentioning them at opening ceremonies, like very, very important that conventions talk about this at opening ceremonies. They need to say this is, you know, a zero tolerance convention. If somebody reports you, you get kicked out immediately. There's no second chances. If you do these things, please refer to the harassment policy and the booklet in your lap. If you do these things, you're going to get kicked out. Not only does that need to happen, but there also needs to be the harassment policy posted everywhere around the convention so that somebody can walk up to it and see very clear, concise rules of what they're not supposed to do. The more visible it is, the less excuses people have. So what can you do if a convention that you're going to doesn't have a harassment policy? First, post on their Facebook, their Twitter, their social media, and tell them that you want one. Tell them that you think it's totally inappropriate that they don't have one, especially in the current day and age when it's very important. There's awesome resources out there. You can Google typical convention harassment policy, and there's basically like forms, and you can just change the words. And if they're saying, oh, it's too much work, we can't do it, say, I will write this for you, and send that to them. Change the verbiage to be about their convention, and make sure they have that. If you're like me and you're guests at conventions, refuse to attend. Don't attend unless they have a harassment policy at their convention, because it's an important thing that's going to be saving people a lot of emotional strife, keeping them out of physical danger, and just opening up people's minds as to what is inappropriate behavior. Because, admit it, in the geek world there's a lot of social awkwardness, and we have to be telling people no, because sometimes they don't know any better. If you're in a worst case scenario and you end up attending a convention that doesn't have a harassment policy, and despite your best efforts they didn't put one up in time, or you didn't know, there are other ways to combat bad behavior. Social media is really amazing to become a social justice vigilante. My greatest thing that I have come up with recently is that if a guy is harassing me in cosplay, taking creepy pictures of me, I will take my phone out, I will take a picture of them, and when they ask me what I'm doing, I'll say, well, I'm going to post you on the internet to my thousands and thousands of followers with a description of your bad behavior unless you can justify why you were doing it. And usually that takes them out of their shell and makes them realize that what they were doing is wrong. So you can do things like that, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself or other people. Social conditioning says, especially for women, that we're not supposed to be difficult or stand up for ourselves, but if you feel uncomfortable, if somebody is making you feel uncomfortable, say something. Don't let them get away with it. If you don't feel comfortable saying something to them, the second they leave, grab a staff member, tell them this person was harassing me. Ask them for their name, take a picture of their badge, make sure your friends are on top of it. Tell your friends before you go into the con, have like a plan of attack. If somebody starts harassing one of you, know what you're going to do. It's all very important to travel in numbers, have other people who have your back. And if you are brave and out there like I am, seriously, and if you see somebody getting harassed and they aren't saying something or seem too shy to say something, don't be afraid to go stand up for them. Don't be afraid to go over to the person who's harassing this person and say, why are you doing this? Are you okay? To the victim, are you okay? To the perpetrator, what are you doing and why are you doing it? Basically, the most important thing about conventions and harassment and conventions is communication and having accessible literature about it. And that's all it really comes down to, and hopefully in the future, if we do that, we're going to be able to prevent things like this horrible Aki-con rape awfulness. Because that shouldn't be happening in our community, you guys. We are so full of amazing people and great fandoms and community and support that things like this shouldn't be sullying it. We shouldn't be letting the negativity seep into it. And I think, honestly, if we band together and if we're educated and if we educate others, that we really can get stuff done. As always, please subscribe. I'll be making more videos like this. If you want me to tackle any sort of issues about anything, tell me. I will make a video about it. And thank you for watching, my darling unicorns. Until next time. McIsaac out.